I really appreciate this. So first of all, thank you for coming. I mean, like, I can't tell you how deeply honored I am that so many people came. We have like virtually the entire quant marketing field here, and it's really impressive. And how extremely grateful I am for you taking the time. I know that people are very much overcommitted in their personal and professional lives. But you know, what I think about this is it's really not so much a celebration of my career, although Amy has taught me that it's occasionally okay to be pleased with yourself. That's something that I kind of learned from her. But I think it's a tribute to how far our field has come. And I'm going to try to keep this very forward-looking. It's not going to be long, but very forward-looking. But I do want to do a little bit of harking back. So if you think, you know, I got into quantitative marketing sometime in the early 90s, you know, in some, you know, whatever, Segway era or whatever, I don't know what. You know, and there are a number of people doing really interesting work. Absolutely. And in fact, Gunter actually alluded to some of the work done in the 60s on documenting state dependence, even before there was a word called state dependence, right? The serial dependence in choices and purchases. That's absolutely true, but it was very mixed. And what's also very interesting to me is I think of marketing as an applied field, right? It's about improving or optimization of something in the interaction between firms and consumers. Right? And that's the sense in which it's not normative like. It's normative, not positive like. Right? Right? So a lot of research doing marketing was not particularly relevant to anything, as far as I could tell. We certainly not informed either social policy or policies of firms. I just give you one. I'm not going to name names or anything like that. You know, not everyone was like Don Morrison, right? Dozens and dozens and dozens of papers were written on a two-parameter model that had no marketing variables in it at all, including papers on how to estimate the model. Should you use nonlinear least squares? Should you use penalized nonlinear least squares? Should you use likelihood, whatever? You know, and I think we're fast forward to where we are today. There's a much higher average quality work being done in marketing than there was. I think the best empirical work in this sort of IO marketing area is done by people in marketing now. Absolutely, no question about it. Right? And the relevance of the work is better. I mean, even think of the papers today. Many of the papers were either directly relevant to issues in firm or indirectly very relevant. And I think that represents a bit of a siege change. Okay, so you do think about your legacy, okay? You know, and the natural inclination of all researchers is to make their legacy be their research, of course, right? And I thought about that and said, well, you know, first of all, it was a lot of fun. Absolutely a lot of fun. But then I also think, you know, I was so lucky. Lucky to be at Anderson and also at Booth. And even in Kellogg for very few years, but I've almost even forgotten that in my senility. You know, they were incredibly rich environments, rich in resources, and rich in people, and also with freedom. Very few people told me what to do. Right? I could do what I wanted to do, what I was enthusiastic. And you know, I've always said this to people. You always want to recruit people that are smarter than you, or at least more knowledgeable than you, at least in some dimension. Otherwise, you never learn. It's like a worthless thing. So I've really had a lot of insightful and valuable colleagues, and you know, I want to modify a variation on an old Imperial German Army phrase. Viel Freunde, viel Ehre. I hope I have the German-speaking people. I got that roughly right. That means many friends, much honor. The actual original phrase was many enemies, much honor, which Gunter told me it had some applicability to my career. Which is True. Some of my friends, via the co-author mechanism, and I tried to ask Claude to do this, and maybe my Claude edition is not. It wouldn't grab names, personal data, right? So I tried to put it on a slide with all my co-authors, and then I started arranging them in alphabetical order because I don't want anyone to infer any priorities or something. Like I have the A list, and then Hunter, you're on the B list, So you saw Greg, Greg. I'm just going to name them really briefly. This is a hilarious picture of Judy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
With a shopping cart, and it was from University of Chicago magazine touting her research, and it's our old paper, right? And it's a little sexist, right? I don't think you wouldn't put Neil on a shopping cart unless it was in Bevmo. There's that young scientist from Aurora, Illinois Mathematics Academy, Keith Chen. Only got to write one paper with Keith, but it was an absolute delight. Tim Connolly, looking like he used to spend a long night out, pretty much every night. And he is a fantastic expositor. JP doing his imitation of a stuffed frog. JP is one of the most enthusiastic and energetic authors I've ever had. This is Ron Gallant, who's a giant of an econometrician, and I'm proud to call a very, very close friend and mentor. He unfortunately passed away last year. Chris Hansen, before double machine learning fame. There is Gunther doing his imitation of Jeff Bezos without the wandering eye. Eric Jacquet that I worked on, actually in finance stuff, Castelli. That's Father Jones, who we worked on optimal taxation. One of the smartest people I've ever met and one of the best economists I've ever met. Son of a Sacramento grocery store clerk, which is pretty impressive because a lot of us have it. My parents were academics, and Chevy Chase, aka Gunther, Leo Cash. Alan had to leave to go to his daughter's graduation this morning, but he was a delight to work with, a true subjective Bayesian. I could never read Rhodey's handwriting, which was a lot of problems. I was confusing C sub T with E sub T in some coding as I was doing as a research assistant, him and Larry. This is Rob McCulloch, who's one of the best statisticians I've ever met. And if you look at that picture closely, you can tell there's a lot of water down that river. This is Nick Polson, that boy, youngish boy. He looks like he just left his tutoring session at All Souls College at Oxford. And he actually looks like that, really, today. George Falcon, really a delight to work with and very enthusiastic. Andrew Ainsley, former PhD student and dean of Rochester Business School, unfortunately he has passed away. Peter Boatwright, who couldn't be here, was great to work with. Rico Bumbaka. I only worked with Pradeep on one paper. It was a delight. I couldn't get into his schedule. It had to be booked many years in advance. And by the way, if Pradeep tried to do this, he'd be stuck for 3 days. And 10 pages long. Sanjay Dar, another one of my colleagues in Chicago, Zvi Galula, John Hall taught me a little bit about conjoint. Jae-Won Kim and Byung-Do Kim were delightful to work with as students and co-authors. Puneet, which I think looks like an invitation to a party at a Pakistani pickup bar. This is Van Gogh's Bumble picture. Young boy, all-American boy. This guy's name is Adam Smith. How about that for a book? That's true. That's actually true. I wish all my co-authors were as supremely confident as Professor Vitorino here. And that's actually my advisor, Arnold Zellner, who actually turns out he taught me a lot of the things, not just about Bayesian methods, but about how to conduct yourself in life. So you ask me to think about, what is the legacy? Will anyone remember any of this stuff? Well, this is my moldy oldie papers. These are some of the top papers, I guess. I mean, I'll call your attention to a few of these titles. Do you want to know any more about optimal taxation models and endogenous growth? I'm not sure. We have a finance professor right here, Andrea Eisenfeld. So they might be some finance professor, not her, she has better taste, might be interested in stochastic volatility models. They're kind of cool models, interesting methodological thing. But I'm not sure that this is really the foundations of a legacy. So I think of my legacy as much more about the provision of public goods, right? And giving back to the field. I've gotten a tremendous amount out of the field in every respect. The collegiality, the data sets, the problems, the methods, everything. And then people have mentioned some of this, so I'm going to go very, very quickly through it. First is the QME, and they're in no particular order. It's not like I think the QME is my crowning achievement or whatever. But let me just go with it. This is the first issue of the QME. And I call everyone, you should all look at that lineup. This March of 2003, so 23 years ago, all of these papers are absolutely outstanding papers. And by the way, I think some people might want to read that paper about 9 endings. Seems like it's been discussed before. They're all good except maybe the last paper is a little more. But other than that, no, really outstanding stuff. And I've been so what happened with that? What happened? Well, so when I got into marketing, people said, I said to myself, excuse me, you need to submit to marketing. How can you claim to be in marketing? Don't submit to any marketing journal. By the way, JP might consider submitting to a marketing journal occasionally. Anyway, so I said, okay, what's the best journal in marketing? Everyone said Marketing Science, which is actually kind of an achievement because it wasn't that old at that time. So I sent in an article in Marketing Science, and I got back 3 different reviewers were assigned. I got back 3 different longish referee reports. I got a, quote, doctoral reviewer, which the editor said, you don't have to pay attention to that, but everyone else said you have to treat that just like another review. So now we're up to 4 reviews, 1 round. I got an AE report, Associate Area Editor, called Area Editor report. This has changed a little bit. And also the editor-in-chief could not control themselves and wrote a little My Summer Vacation Reading Your Paper review on page 1, including such gems as, I don't like your use of the symbol capital sigma for a variance-covariance matrix. You want omega? You want delta? Delta is usually reserved for diagonal matrix. So that's, how many is that? 3, that's query check. That's 6 reviews per round. And then everyone said, and they invited a revision and said, I consider that a positive signal, right? And so they, and then you said, well, no, my paper got rejected in the 3rd round. What? So this is unbelievably socially wasteful. 6 reviews per round and 3 rounds was very customary, maybe more, okay? So I said, we can do better than that, right? And I'm very proud of the record of the QME. I think the QME does provide superior service to authors. Does the QME always do that? No, of course. It's a stochastic decision-making under uncertainty situation. You're going to make mistakes both ways. But I do think that it has offered a better service and we tried not to do as much psychological damage to the authors by treating them respectfully. In particular, I rejected some reviews because I felt they were not professional. I told them, I didn't reject them in the sense that you have to resubmit. Okay? And also, competition is a good thing. Marketing Science can't get away with that anymore. They only can, because of competition, right? It's a good thing. And even the current editor of JMR has made some mumblings about trying to reform. So I think that's a great thing. I didn't realize that the QME conference was going to be such a crowning success. By the way, why does every building built recently in University of Chicago look like a glass box? And now they all have big signs in it for lease. It has really been a pleasure to go to those conferences and just enjoy the fact that the papers are high quality mostly. Why? Because there's a single track and there's discussion, so it keeps the authors honest, right? Because they can't present some garbage because the discussants will nail them, right? And the discussants at the last QME that I went to did unbelievable jobs, like simulation studies and all kinds of unbelievable stuff. And so it's really a source of tremendous pride and pleasure to me at the QME conference. The other thing I think is very important to realize is the first QME conference that we went to, which was in Chicago, I think, and it was almost entirely male. Now you go to the QME conference, it's minimum 50% female. Now it does skew to younger and more research-active researchers, which tend to be female. So I think that tended to be just a great thing. Data. This has been just alluded to. I won't go on very, but this, and Gunter mentioned the pornographic movie server on my.
It wasn't me, it was.
Who mentioned that? Okay, sorry, JP. Well, I'm sorry. I don't want to mean. I thought, well, you know what? On the market, you see, like people were like, they would say, "Oh, well, I can't share my data with you." They wanted to earn rents on it. You know what they were saying? I bring no value added. It's only the data. That's crazy. You want to distribute your code and your data to everyone and make it easy to use so you'll get more sites. How tough is that to understand? This went so well, dozens and dozens of papers, including papers in macro. What? They thought that it had something to do with sticky prices. They were completely wrong, but the Nielsen data, that's basically 3 panels. As everyone knows, stores, households, and TV viewing households. That's Jim Kiltz. I was able to convince Jim, an incredible alumni and friend of the school, to basically order Nielsen to get the data. Basically tell them, because he had a private equity interest in Nielsen at the time, you got to do this. He also provided the initial funding for the Field Center and has since matched that and backed it up with a tremendous other thing. The other person is this is Art Middlebrooks, who is currently the executive director still? Not former executive director, and he just threw himself at this implementation of this, not his area, but did an unbelievable, without him it wouldn't be available. And so, we used to say, as I used to say to Nielsen, I said, instead of archiving your older data, which means essentially throwing it out, send it to the Field Center. And now we have these panels that are, in some cases, close to 20 years long. Okay, BaySM, that people mentioned, here's all the functions that are in it. I decided to write BaySM when we were doing the first edition of Bayesian Statistics and Marketing. And I said, how about this? Why don't I have the following discipline? I won't write about anything in a methodological volume that I haven't computed and I haven't provided documentation, test data sets, and reasonably efficient code. Maybe not the most efficient code in the world, right? And that's a hell of a discipline to impose yourself. So I ended up basically going in on Saturday afternoon for a year working on BaySM from 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I think someone mentioned it has over 1,270,000 downloads. That makes it 950th or so out of 24,000 packages. There are actually more like 100,000 R packages. And it's interesting, if you actually look at the packages that are ranked above BaySM in terms of downloads, they're mostly things like ggplot2. They're utilities. They're not statistics. And then some people at OpenAI are now using BaySM as a demonstration of the use of AI tools in order to optimize the code. Seems like we're getting 10-fold, 50-fold increases in speed So that might be helpful. Okay, so think about it. So a lot of people told me I was an idiot for doing this public good stuff because everyone knows the private rate of return that's what it means. Private rate of return is much lower than the social rate of return. I think they're just wrong. It is absolutely true that doing that stuff meant in the short run I wrote fewer papers. Okay, but in the long run, it's the stuff I remembered. So I want everyone here to think about it. Do you want to be remembered just for your ski trips? I don't think so. Okay. Yes. Who is that? Who is that? Expert skier, I'm told. Expert skier. I'm told.
I want to be remembered for my ski trip, so why not?
Yeah, he's Olympic skier, but there was that knee problem. And so I love this quote. This is the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. So what's next for me? I really tried to improve myself over my life. Not always successfully, but I've tried. So I'd like to be a better husband. That's Amy in her favorite restaurant in London, which will be there shortly. Anil alluded to my weaknesses as a fisherman. I don't know, that doesn't look too bad, does it? That's a steelhead. That's this March in northern Michigan, in typical Michigan weather for March. So I hope to bring to the boat. I don't kill any of these fish. Bigger fish than that. I also want to be a better brother, a better father, a better uncle, and a better grandparent. So these are my granddaughters. My daughter Emily's 3 daughters, Anna, Margot, and Frances. That's my son Ben, working in his office in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is my nephew, George Hotwater, who it's been a delight for us. He now lives in LA, and we interact with him once a week. This is my sister and her husband, Dave, and hope to be a better sister. One of the delights of the last 10 years has been establishing a much stronger and deeper relationship with my sister, which I really appreciate. And so I can't decide whether I am an honorary uncle or an honorary grandparent. And that goes for Amy too. That's Ronan, and there she is. Seneca, Long Chen, Keith Chen, and Elisa Long's children. So to be even more part of their lives. I hope to do some of the things I want to do in retirement are things that I put off doing, and some of the things I want to do in my retirement are things that I would like to do more of. And this is one thing I like to do more of. That's my plane. We call it Asian Scully 2, after a dog that we used to own. And it's a very capable aircraft, flies very fast, very high, and very long. And I just haven't had enough time to fly it as much as I'd like to. So I hope to, and I've been threatening to do this for years and have never followed through, is to do a cross-country trip and stop at the various places, give Angela Lee her promised airplane ride and others here. I'd like to end with this. So let me set this up. This is a very, very short video. So this is the coast of Northern California, just a little bit south of Mendocino. That's a secondary growth redwood forest. Many of those trees are 150 to 200 feet tall. That's the fog layer, so-called marine layer, that's coming in. And underneath what that looks like gray cotton candy is the ocean, by the way. And that dot there is the plane. Now, I just want to ask Kevin not to report this to the FAA. It's called a flyby or buzzing at one of my friend's house. A former Navy carrier pilot, actually, so he wasn't perturbed by this at all. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and I just want to, if you can do me one more favor, do us one more favor, is come to our house this evening at 6. You should have received instructions how to get there. We're going to have drinks and a buffet dinner. The only thing we ask is a bit cranky neighbors. So we live on a little private drive, and I've highlighted on the map, on the Google Earth picture, highlighted area to park on the street. You can Uber fine, totally fine, you know, but if you're coming in your own car, if you could park on the Cielo Drive proper, we'd appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you very much.
I don't think I got the address thing.
Yeah.
You didn't get this?
About 40.
Okay,
Send it out again.
okay. 10 to 210.
Really?
All right.
Yeah, hopefully,
Likewise, likewise, yes.
an hour.
I think I was Judy.
Yeah, I left my bag and I'm actually taking
Let's find out.
I'm Dolly. It's true, but if you go to say hi to Steve. Hopefully one day I will
It's not 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's we have time to well, so okay, so hey,
No, I did.
a discussion with Leah and
I gotta go back, I gotta get going and get all this stuff together.
you're gonna earn time coming. We also have it as mechanics now. It shows the it turns out it's actually very similar to
I'll do the big.
yeah, but you can see the we can ask. So I could say that given the same domain, delete all I do because it's exactly the role that change. But of course, now suppose
I just want to my bag.
so they would change. And that's a
Going to go for a walk around the area.
this is
Bring my bag with me.
So, are you going
it's snipped off.
until 5:15? Are you going, what stupid are you doing?
I think Cesar, myself, and you and Rose
Walk around all the way.
You can extrapolate.
without any messages. And if they're similar, I get a message from you.
Yeah, so
PM late.
Oh, yeah.
No, so it's yeah, so we've done that, because, yeah, Guevi, so, it's advantage of the actual model, right? And
yeah.
the whole point of our paper is not to say one is bad or the other is worse. And they're both valid in their own way.
He joined us
But for decision making, if you have a reasonable structural model, it obviously as you would choose.
Somewhat relative from you're trying to make, which is more about, is the structural model do whatever tolerance needs? I mean, that's how you write it. 60%. Or is the experiment tolerance?
Bill almost didn't have his email. He's a smart guy, but he didn't
Prompted that
PhD in
one.
economics.
Which I think is
I was
interesting.
tutoring.
Let's go.
Reverse relationship.
I'll
And I was his student, but I was teaching him. But it was a nice of him to show up. First time in 40 years that he showed up at Stanford.
Yeah, somehow got lucky, but lucky to be able to track him.
Yeah, it was nice to see him again. My goodness, a long time.
I have the Massey Montgomery and Morrison book on my desk. I'm writing an article for Stanford marketing.
Yeah, she said, I mean,
Vitala,
she's on the-
Vitala Rao and
she should be on, yeah, she should be.
publishing.
He
I
was
keep
on
writing an article.
Yeah. Noah? Noah's on it as well.
Your thoughts
Yeah, that'd be,
Um,
it was, I did a couple sabbaticals at Stanford.
Yes.
Who else? Heaven.
I knew a lot of the faculty.
All right.
Bill was my
there.
my real mentor and role model, Jerry Lieberman. Did you know Jerry? He developed ALS. But we were on sabbatical in '97, last year.
Yeah.
And his wife, Helen, was amazing. Every weekday from 4 to 6, she hosted an event.
Starting at 6.
It was like a salon. And she had,
It's at 6.
wine, cheese, soft drinks, so on. And Jerry kept getting more and more advanced computers, and he could talk.
Pressing stop is the right.
And she did that. So Sherry went a few times. I went every single week to